All right. This is my video for IA Week 9. And with me today is my friend. He's also in computer science. His name is Santiago. I mean, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Santiago del Rio Obando.
Yeah, and
It's a pleasure to be here, Joshua.
thank you for joining me. So, um, in regards to the reason why I've been joining me is because this week's topics from the videos that were provided were all about vibe coding and using cursor and AI tools. But what I learned more of was from the videos in regards to vibe coding. So,
Yes.
just diving into it. What is vibe coding? So it's a term that was recently introduced, and it's just a coding style of programming that leverages AI to generate code from natural language, rather than having people manually code it. And I have these images from Boruto, just to kind of like make a simile to it, where it's like you're not technically doing the jutsus yourself or the techniques. You're just using some like scientific tool to do it for you. So there's not necessarily any skill that's going behind it, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, going into what vibe coding is, it's introduced by this guy named Andrej Karpathy in February 2025. So recently this year, and he is a co-founder of OpenAI and leader at Tesla. And basically, this is just I'm reiterating what I said before. Basically, vibe coding, you're just using LLMs, so large language models like ChatGPT, to generate code for you. And the main purpose of this is to shift the roles from coding to from having the coders from like just coding to testing, refining, and guiding the code. So this brings me into like, or brings us to our first like discussions, like our vibe coding and personal perspectives, right? So this comes from the Y Combinator video, and these people were talking about what vibe coding is doing, right? And basically they're saying that can become like a 10 times engineer, meaning like someone can just become like an engineer at a rate of 10 times or something like that, or 10 times worth an engineer or something like that. And I wanted your opinion on that.
I mean, that's certainly true, right? With the rise of LLMs and OpenAI, that just, ChatGPT, DeepSeek, and all those other tools. I would say the production speed of the average developer has increased as well as because AI is an amazing resource for you to use, right? The problem comes in that it's sort of like handing for the most part people who don't know how to use tools and just handing them like something that can generally be applied for anything, but they don't really know like the logic behind of like what it is that you do, right? So it's kind of like if I were to compare it to ramen, it's kind of like the instant ramen, right? If what I'm saying makes sense,
Yes,
it's
yes.
like a cheap way of like trying to get and make the same result. And while it does make you 100% productive, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're generating a good product. And like ever since the topic was introduced, right? Like I've seen like several types of like games and stuff that were vibe coded, and the goal of that is not to make like an amazing product or to deliver a great service to people. It's to generate as much slop as possible in order to be able to like profit of it as much as possible, right? So people have been like using generative AI in order to significantly speed up their output in the hopes of making quantity over quality profits.
Yeah, I like the perspective you have on that. And I can say like this kind of leads into like um like just the how society is with capitalism. Like, most companies kind of value this now because um in the videos they were speaking about how um like from the gist of I was getting from it, computer scientists or software engineers are kind of going to be like phased out, And
Hmm.
this kind of brings me to my next slide, or the next few slides. um they prioritize people like that are like that major in mathematics or are training in physics, right? Or have like degrees in physics, right? Because they think that people with these technical minds are more desired, because vibe coding, they can do vibe coding, right? They're saying like that because of vibe coding, they can just learn what basically us computer scientists are learning in like a great speed in like a small amount of time, right? Because that they already have the skills to think technically, right? Like,
Hmm.
um, my brother, speaking from like his experience, he solves a lot of math problems. So when it comes to coding, he's able to learn it really fast, right? He gets the concepts pretty down fast, right? But it also brings about this question where it's like, um, just because people can vibe code, does that mean they should? And it kind of goes back to your perspective where um, people are generating this quote unquote slop, right? Because they don't understand what they're technically generating out, right? Um, or what a good design principle is. So like they could learn it quick, but in my opinion, like the skills of computer scientists also comes with time and personal experience. So when you're building a code or you create bugs or anything like that, you know what to do and what not to do in the future. Does that make sense? So
It does,
yeah.
and that's sort of like the thing, right? AI is really good at generating stuff. It's not particularly good at tweaking stuff, right? So it could generate something that seems pretty good at that start, right? But the infrastructure of it is not sort of like built to last, right? So I feel like that's like the major role that computer scientists are gonna start filling in the years to come, right? Because with like the vibe coding, rise in vibe coding, right? There's gonna be a lot of vibe coded projects in like this sort of like infrastructure that's like about to collapse at any moment from like any sort of like bug or things. And vibe coders wouldn't really be able to like parse through the code, right? Because they don't understand. For the most part, most of them don't understand the code in the first place, right? So they just be keep feeding it to the AI, and the AI, and the AI is just gonna keep spitting it over and over and over again. And maybe sometimes it'll fit it, but sometimes it's not gonna be able to fit it, right? And then the problems will just expand on there because you're sort of the foundation of the thing is not strong, right? Because it doesn't follow like design principles. It's not like well commented, you know.
But
But
yeah, I agree with
yeah.
you. That kind of goes into my next slide. So hold your thoughts on that, because that's a pretty good perspective. Actually, that's the next topic. But as is in this image, these are some of the comments on YouTube, and just take it with a grain of salt. But they're just opinions, right? But I
Mhm.
think others' opinions bring new perspectives, right? And most of the perspectives on this video was purely negative, right? Like people were saying like 100 times faster. What the heck are they building? To do list, right? And from someone that doesn't do like that doesn't build software or anything like that, they're like they probably don't understand the statement. But from me, right? Yes, it is easy to build a to-do list. There's a bunch of to-dos list out there, and that's where this LLMs learn from, right? They learn
Mhm.
from the available code, right? But if we're building like something you said, like something that has more design principles, something that's really large scale, it's not gonna do it 100 times faster, right? And like when we're working on code, 90% of the time, like this comment says, like for me at least, right? And I've noticed for other people, the most of the time and experience comes from actually understanding what's not working with the code, right? And that's one
Yeah.
of the statements they have in the video, is that it's not very good at debugging. So obviously, like there's a lot of drawbacks to this, right? And most of the people that are talking on this um are people who are on the business side, right? So um it's there's a lot of controversy, a lot of discussion to be had with the engineers and the people who actually sell these products, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes the people who sell these products don't understand the engineering that goes behind it, right?
Yes.
Do you have any
Uh,
more thoughts on that?
well, there for the most part, right? You're absolutely correct. In any sort of like business as we know it, there's always like the developer side, and then there's the business side, and that's why we have in like our team liaisons in order to connect the dev team with like the business team in order to fulfill that team's vision, right? And I guess the way the business world sort of looks at it, right? It's all about numbers, right? AI is incredibly cheaper compared to like hiring like a full staff of engineers in order to deliver a product, right? And it can be fast. So that's why I guess there's this sort of big push in order to develop AI. But and AI is an amazing resource, right? But at the end of the day, it's a tool, right? And in order to make the best use of a tool, you need someone you need someone that's well equipped to use that tool, right? In other words, software engineers, right? And that is, I guess, where I would see like the future of AI in our field being, right? Because, like for example, myself, right? Sometimes when I encounter like a bug in my code, and I'm sure you've used like stuff like Visual Studio or like Eclipse, right? Particularly Java in like web dev, right? It prints out this for Spring Boot. It prints out like this entire like essay of like these error things, right? And that's like a pain to read through, right? But you can just feed that into like, for example, ChatGPT, right? And ask it, hey, what do these errors mean? And it reads it instantly, and it lets you know where the problem is. So you'll know where exactly to go in your code, right? Because you know what it's referencing, right? And you'll be able to go there and fix it up and then try to run it again, right? But that's using your intuition and using the AI as a tool in order to like speed up the process for you rather than you reading that entire like essay long error list, right? You
Yeah,
get what I'm saying?
yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and this
Yeah.
actually, your what you just this stated actually segues perfectly into my next slide. And I know there's no words here, but um, technically, what I searched up is just foundation, right? Foundation with buildings, because like this is an analogy I like to make. It's like, people think like if we were to use AI to build buildings, I don't think it can necessarily do it correctly on a building that's already built, right? So
Yeah.
like for example, right? What you're saying is like, the people, it's more of a tool, and exactly, people outside don't see it as a tool. Some see, like, people that are outside that don't use this, right, that are not in our particular field, they think it's going to replace us. That's one of the arguments out there, or opinions. But in reality, it's not like that, because it's a tool that just helps us. Like, for example, when the hammer was created, right? And then now we have like a jackhammer, right? Will it replace the hammer? Not necessarily. It just speeds up the process of development and work, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, and from the comments I read from developers with in terms of vibe coding and these AI tools, right? It doesn't necessarily make a 10 times engineer, right? It doesn't make someone like one person worth 100, right? It's more of like it makes your production, um your what's the word, productivity, right, increase by like 20%, right? Like you were saying, you get these bunch of error logs, right? Before GPT came out or anything like that, doing research on why your thing would take extremely long time, because you would have to parse through it yourself, right? But then now
Mm-hmm.
with LLMs, they can just break it down for you and kind of narrow down what you're looking for, which will help speed up your process of developing software. So, um, that's what I agree with you with your perspective. And then also, yeah, going back to this, right? So many tools out there, like for example, why is Java still wanted out there, or old types of frameworks, right? It's because it's already built on a foundation, and you can't necessarily like get rid of it, right? And that's what vibe coding can't necessarily replace, because if you were to put some jank code in that building, it would just really mess with the existing infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I really don't see like big companies, particularly like big finance companies or things, entrusting everything to AI, right? Like the infrastructure, right? Otherwise, one errand, that's a lot of money right there down the drain. I I like that would cause, I think, like something akin to like the Great Depression, right? Which is why, but for the most part, I do think there's like a bright future with AI. Like you said, it's a great tool in order to like speed up like the process. Because I like to think of it as like a virtual industrial revolution in a way, right? The industrial revolution really kicked up productivity for like mankind, and we've been able to massively increase like the output of products that we physical products that we made. AI is kind of like the virtual version of that, you know?
Yeah, that's like a perfect example. Like I actually like that. Yeah, and like just like when things are mass produced, it becomes cheaply made, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah, go ahead.
and that's why you sort of need like humans to guide behind the tool, right? Because that's how you get customized things that align with the user vision. Because AI is not that great at fully implementing 100% of what you want, right? Like for example, it sucks with front end because it can't see, right? If you ask it to develop a front end for like your website, right? That for the most part is going to be pretty bad because it doesn't really know what it looks like. It can only sort of assume based on its data, and then you run it, it looks terrible, right? And that's where like the human touch comes in, right? That's where, and another thing that it's bad at is sort of it can only regurgitate, it can't innovate,
Yeah,
and that's another place where a human touch comes in, right?
yeah. Put that on a plaque. Yeah, it can't recreate or whatever you just said. Put it on a plaque.
Yeah, it regurgitates, it doesn't innovate. um Computer science is one of like the few fields, like at the end of the day we're creators, we build, we make stuff, right? Whether it's a website, whether it's an entire like video game, or even like LLMs, right? That was made by humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
We at the end of the day are creators, and in a way it's sort of like art, right? It mixes science with art because a lot of our products we made are for users to use, and we want what we made to be intuitive to our users, and that sort of and that requires sort of like human thinking, because it requires a level of empathy that machines can't replicate. For a lack of a better term, like you really don't believe like the human soul until you see like a creation made without it,
Mm-hmm.
which is what a lot of you know
Yeah.
AI and stuff is. In particular, there's also like a bunch of AI art, right?
Mm-hmm. So
Or AI videos.
yeah, so this actually brings me, because like we're running well over time, which is good. But I'm just
Oh,
gonna
sorry.
no, it's good. But like what you were saying, like with AR art and everything, there's a lot of like moral issues with that. For me, I personally don't like AI art, and this kind of segues into this final slide for this section, which is well, yeah, this quote that I remember. um, two roads diverge in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by. I'm pretty sure everyone heard this quote by Robert Frost, but I like this quote because like everyone probably is vibe coding today, right? But the
Mhm.
road that's less traveled by is actually coding it yourself and actually spending time understanding what the code does and making sure you're building quality over quantity and anything like that. For me personally, I went I went over a project with someone in my class that built everything entirely on vibe code, right? And instead of engineering it from front to back, we went from back to front. So there was time spent understanding like what the code it generated, like the architecture of it, which was really completely messy, all the bugs. So the same amount of time that we probably could have like built something from the ground up, it was like the same amount of time just like trying to debug it, understand what was generated. And it wasn't even like, as we were discussing in this whole time, like it wasn't foundationally strong. And this picture, I'm pretty sure you've seen this episode in Teen Titans, but it's like when Robin was going through like those trials in the mountain, and
Yeah.
then this lady says something along the lines like, you shouldn't be discouraged from doing it the right way, even though there's others doing it the wrong way. And I think it just depends on your person. Like, again, like you were saying, AI tools could be used to make the person better, enhance yourself. But you shouldn't cheat yourself out of it, if that makes sense. And that's my perspective on this. And um would you like to share what you take away from this?
I think you nailed it pretty much on the head, right? We shouldn't become reliant on it in the to the point that we think it can do everything because it just flat out simply can't. At least maybe one day they'll actually create like a strong AI that's able to think and learn and adapt like a human. But for right now, all AI is quote unquote weak AI, so it can only like restate what it knows, and the way it restates is through a really smart algorithm at the end of the day, right? But it's basically word association, right? It's like I usually see this with this and that with that.
Hmm.
And that's kind of thinking is incredibly limited, and it's surpassed by like a child at 7 years old.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, yeah, that's pretty much it for this section. I had another section, but she's going into tools. What is cursor? I'm pretty sure we both know what cursor is. I didn't really know too much about it, but there were some videos that Professor Abbott posted. What are agents? Um, and basically the one thing that I took away from this, yeah, it's AI powered. It does coding for you, like what we've been discussing, what vibe coding is. But the agent that there was an actual agent in here, and what intelligent agents are, it's basically like a way to activate a function by saying something. So if you're like, oh, I want to debug this, right? Instead of pressing a button debug, it runs that function for you, right?
Mm,
So agent mode is basically completes end-to-end task with executing commands on providing feedback. So like let's say you want like, okay, every time I save, go run this code. So it does something like that. And then YOLO mode, it basically, oh yeah, this is an extension of that. YOLO mode just does that for you. Um, and then MCP, this is what Sanskar talked about on the other day in the collab, and I think it's the most important thing. It's actually the basis of what an agent is. Um, Basically, we use LLMs, and the LLMs decide what functions to run based on the context you're saying. So let's say like, oh, I want to organize my emails, right? By school, right? It's gonna call the
mhm.
necessary APIs to do that in your Gmail, right? So that's just the concept of this, and it's the basis of what an intelligent agent is. So yeah, that kind of
Sounds
concludes
cool.
the thing. Thank you for joining me today.
Of course,
All right,
this was fun.
all right, thank you. See you guys. Want to say bye?
Bye.